Hello, students, and welcome back to our discussion of The Great Gatsby. Today, we're going to go over the second half of Chapter 7, the one where Gatsby and Tom fight over Daisy, and then Daisy runs over Myrtle, and then George thinks Gatsby did it. Wow, this chapter is complicated and messy, so we need to make sure we understand everything. So here's where we last left off. All right, this is my drawing. Pretend to like it and say, "Oh, Mr. Bockel, I didn't realize of your many talents, cartooning is one of them." If you do, I'll give you extra credit. Okay, so over here on the left, we've got Gatsby's yellow car. We know this is Gatsby's yellow car because Tom is driving it. In the back seat are Jordan and Nick. Over in this other car here, it's blue. It's Tom's car. We know it's Tom's car because Gatsby's driving it and he and Daisy are doing their thing. And just for the record, that line, "Kiss me, old sport," it doesn't work, I know. Okay, so Tom stops at Wilson's garage to get some gas, and then we learn that George has just found out that his wife has been cheating on him. He doesn't realize with whom, and he doesn't realize that he's staring into that he's talking with the man that his wife has been sleeping with. We know that he doesn't. Anyway, so then here we have Myrtle, and George locked Myrtle in the bedroom. That's a terrible idea. If your spouse or significant other disagrees with you, don't lock them up in a room. That's not a good way to handle stress. Or yeah, anyway, Myrtle's here, and she looks out, and rightfully so, she believes that this yellow car belongs to Tom. She believes that this yellow car is Tom. We need to remember that in order to understand what happens later. Okay, so right now, I don't know about you, but my heart is breaking for Tom. Within the last hour, Tom has realized that he is both losing his wife and his mistress. Oh, Tom, you certainly have my sympathy right now. All right, our crazy cast of characters are now going to do what most people do when they don't know how to spend the time of their afternoon. They drive to the most expensive city, and in the most expensive city, they go to the most expensive hotel and rent the most expensive suite just to discuss what they're going to do with their time. Totally makes sense to me. That's what I do on my teacher's salary. So they end up at a suite in the Plaza Hotel in an attempt to cool off. Tensions increase between Gatsby and Tom, and yes, you didn't think it was possible, but they do get hotter. Tom accuses Gatsby in a subtle Mean Girls sort of way about lying about being an Oxford man. Tom finally explodes and explicitly calls out the affair. Interestingly, he doesn't seem too much bothered about the infidelity as he does by the fact that Gatsby is Mr. Nobody from nowhere. He says, "I suppose the latest thing to do is to sit back and let Mr. Nobody from nowhere make love to your wife. Well, if that's the idea, you can count me out." Nowadays, people begin by sneering at family life and family institutions, and next they'll throw everything overboard and have interracial marriage between black and white. Somehow, he turns this into a racist rant. Shouldn't he be concerned about his wife's infidelity? Oh, Tom, I've got so many issues with you. All right. Now, remember, Daisy has one line this whole thing. And Gatsby's rehearsed that with her several times. The line is, "Tom, I never loved you." She can't say it. So Gatsby tells Tom instead, "Daisy never loved you." Now, I find it really concerning how Gatsby and Tom are discussing Daisy's feeling. And you know who's not discussing Daisy's feeling? Daisy. Tom says that she does love him and that in fact he loves her too, even though he's been with everything that walks since they got married. Daisy tells Tom he's revolting and asks how could she possibly love him now. She has a really hard time saying she never loved Tom, but she does eventually after much deliberation. Tom, however, gets all sad and puppy dog-eyed, and he asks if she ever loved him here or there, or that one time he carried her all over the puddles so it wouldn't ruin her favorite pair of shoes, and the shoes does it for Daisy. Daisy breaks down and says, "Oh, Jay, you want too much," she cried to Gatsby. "I love you now. Isn't that enough? I can't help what's the past." She began to sob helplessly. "I did love him once, but I loved you too." Gatsby's eyes opened and closed. "You loved me too?" This breaks Gatsby. This breaks his dream. Remember, he wanted to go back in time 5 years to the Daisy who had never met, fell in love with, married, or had a kid with Tom. And now she admits that she loved Tom. And Gatsby realizes he can't have his dream. Tom realizes he has the upper hand and goes in for the kill. While Gatsby insists that Daisy is going to leave Tom, Tom reveals that Gatsby is a bootlegger. And at this accusation, Gatsby loses his crap and looks like he has killed a man. Bosserman adapts this scene really well, so I'm just going to roll the clip.
Mr. Gatsby, exactly who are you, anyhow? You see, I have made a small investigation into your affairs. You're one of my Wolfsheim's bunch.
Please, let's go home.
See, he and this Wolfsheim, they bought up a lot of drugstores and sold bootlegged alcohol over the counter.
What about it, old sport?
Don't you call me old sport. And this drugstore business is just small change compared to this bond stunt that you and Wolfsheim have got going on.
Your friend Walter Chase isn't too proud to come in on it.
I've been giving that some thought. How does a reputable banker like Walter Chase find himself up to his eyeballs in debt?
I'll tell you how.
To a little kike like Wolfsheim.
It's called greed, old sport.
That's right. And you have half of Wall Street out there swilling your free booze at that fun park every weekend. I'm surprised he hasn't tried to drag you in.
Yeah.
My God, he has.
He's got nothing to do
With your little racket. Daisy. Daisy. Can't you see who this guy is? With his house, and his parties, and his fancy clothes. Here's just the front for Wolfsheim, gangster.
Keep it cool,
Get his
Gatsby.
claws into respectable folk like Walter Chase.
The only respectable thing about you, old sport, is your money. Your money, that's it. I have just as much as you. That means we're equal.
Oh, no, no. We're different. I am, they are, she is. We're all different from you. You see, we were born different.
Keep it cool, Gatsby.
Steal nothing that you do, say, or steal, or dream up. You have a case now.
Girl like this. You shut up! Shut up! You shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Gatsby looked in that moment as if he had killed a man.
My sincerest apologies.
Wow. Once Daisy sees Gatsby for who he really is, a dangerous bootlegging mobster who has probably killed several people, Daisy begs Tom to go. Tom wins. Tom's so confident that he secured Daisy that he sends Daisy home with Gatsby in Gatsby's car. Why? This is weird. Well, It's because Tom knows the drill. He's had multiple affairs throughout the marriage, and he knows that eventually the affair has to come to an end and you have to have a conversation where you get some closure. So he's basically saying, Daisy, Gatsby, go home, break up. Daisy, I'll meet you at home. Once Daisy and Gatsby leave, Tom acts like nothing happened, just a normal day for rich people. And then, sadly, Nick realizes it's his birthday and he's 30. Poor Nick. Everything is progressing quite skippily, if somehow tensely, until Nick narrates, "So we drove toward death through the cooling twilight." Everyone gets into Tom's car, and things pretty much go downhill from here. Tom, Jordan, and Nick stop at Wilson's place, and it's obvious a tragedy has occurred. Michaelis, Wilson's neighbor, reveals that Myrtle came running out when she saw a yellow car, the same yellow car that Tom was driving earlier, the same yellow car that Myrtle believed belonged to Tom. The car struck and killed her, and then sped off without stopping. It's obvious to Nick and company that the car was Gatsby's. Tom converses with the policeman at the scene of the crime about how the guilty car is yellow, but his own car is blue. As they drive away, Tom whimpers that Gatsby is a coward because he didn't even stop. Now, when we get back to Long Island, Nick finds Gatsby waiting outside the Buchanan's house to make sure that Tom doesn't get violent with Daisy. And in this moment, Gatsby reveals that Daisy was actually driving the car when it struck Myrtle. Daisy was driving the car. Daisy killed Myrtle. But Gatsby is prepared to sacrifice himself, perhaps in one last attempt to win Daisy's love, and to let everybody think that he was driving the car. Observing a scene of intimacy between Tom and Daisy, Nick realizes that the couple has reconciled. Tom and Daisy are back together. When Nick leaves, Jay is still outside watching the house, which in Nick's words is watching over nothing. So, in chapter 8, you're going to learn more about Gatsby's past and his relationship with Daisy from 5 years ago. And then we're going to turn our attention back to George Wilson. In a short time, George has lost his wife to both an affair and now a tragic accident. He believes that the man who was sleeping with his wife is also the same man who was driving the car. This is Mr. Bockel. Keep reading, keep learning.